Hello again, everybody, and welcome to a very special edition of Freeform Friday, but on a Saturday afternoon here in sunny but cold Montreal, Quebec, Canada. Joining me for this very special episode is a true legend in the world of hard rock and heavy metal, former singer of Accept, Bonfire, but the frontman of the Bangalore Choir, who recently released their long anticipated new album, Rapid Fire Succession on Target Part 2. And also, David released a solo album called Baptized by Fire back in March of 2024. And I also strongly suggest that you check it out as well. And we're here to talk about your career and what you're up to lately and what we should expect in the future. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us today. What's going on, sir? How are you?
Great, great. Hi, David. Nice to say hi to all your Canadian listeners. Bonjour. I think you speak French in Montreal, yeah? Quebec?
Oh oui, on parle français. Oui, on parle français ici à Montréal, mais la plupart de la province de Québec. Mais in Montreal, you can get by with just speaking English. But then when you travel to other parts of the province of Quebec, and if you don't speak French, there's a little bit of a language barrier.
Ah, interesting. I live in a village about an hour south of Piacenza, and the country of Italy actually has 51 dialects.
Oh,
Which I recently learned. And there's one lady in this village in her late 90s who speaks all 51. And many people go to her to learn if they're going to travel to the South or different areas to pick up some of the slangs and stuff. Amazing to me.
and so my first question to you was about your child. What was your childhood? Was your childhood in Oklahoma a very musical one?
Well, my grandmother's brothers were all players, country, bluegrass style. And I have very vivid memories of they were farmers, and of course they're in the fields all day and would come home, wash up, and sit down on the porch and play. And I can still smell them, and I can remember sitting on my Uncle Willard, we called him, his lap, and him playing an acoustic guitar. I can still remember the smell of that old box top. And they had a fiddle player, one of the brothers, banjo, and all that. So my introduction to music was country. And my grandmother used to have one of those old, where you have the television, the turntable, the 8-track, and all that stuff included, right? And all she played all day was Loretta Lynn, George Jones, Conway Twitty, uh, all of them. And that's what she would sing all day long in the house. And that's what I sang.
Oh, nice, nice.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm
And
a huge country fan. I mean, I love country music, real country music. I don't like this Bon Jovi style pop so-called country that's out now, but to me is so far left of George Jones and, the Texas Shuffle, the Bob Wills and all the Charlie Prides and all the stuff that I was growing on, traditional country music. I do see a resurgence, with Billy Strings and Marcus King and Blackberry Smoke. A lot of those guys are kind of picking up the mantra from the days of old and adding it in their sets. And I really find that interesting.
yeah, I'm also a huge country music fan, but the real traditional country music,
Yeah.
not this pop stuff that gets forced down our throats.
Yeah. It's not country. It's kind of 80s Bon Jovi rock to me with, country lyrics. And I'd rather hear about John R. Cash and those guys, talking about trains and pickup trucks and a good bird dog and, drinking your marriage away and stuff like that. George Jones was probably the finest singer in country music that ever lived. I listen to him all the time.
Mhm. Did you ever by chance watch it was an animated show that would have been on I'm trying to remember the channel, but here in Canada it was on the movie channel, and it was a series called Tales from the Tour Bus, brought to you by Mike Judge, creator of Beavis and Butthead and King of the Hill, and he had
Oh
a whole
yeah,
entire season dedicated to country.
I do remember that. That was a couple years ago, right?
Yes,
Excuse me. Yeah, I remember seeing some of those episodes. That was cool. I think he had Willie. He was on Willie's bus for a while, right? Riding around and playing cards and telling
yes.
stories, and you know.
Yeah. Mhm. Very good series indeed. And after you moved to Minnesota from Oklahoma, was it for musical
Mhm.
reasons in
No,
earlier in
my
your youth?
no, my father was a chemist for Phillips 66 Petroleum, and in '68 they had a huge layoff, and he went job hunting, and a bunch of Okies. My family ended up in Minnesota, of all godforsaken places for weather, and he went to work for 3M. And that year, we moved in around September, and I remember that was the one of the harshest winters they'd had in 20 years. So we had never seen snow or cold like that in our lives. I mean, minus 30, 40, 8 feet of snow. It was insane. That's how I ended up in Minnesota.
All right. And I know that we had discussed, I had mentioned Sacred Child, but you don't have any vivid recollections of your experience with the band, if anything?
Well, I mean, in Minnesota is where my career kicked off. I played in since I was about 17. I started playing nightclubs. And the way that happened was I'd left home around 15 years old and moved into an apartment full of people, kids that we grew up with. And one of the guys was a guitar player. And I was working factories and breaking my back for $2 an hour. And I'd come home covered in sludge, and he'd be laying on the couch with a couple girls in a Strat and been playing clubs. And I hated him because he didn't seem like he had to do anything. And one day in the shower, the old days, we had the AM radio with the batteries. We put it on the soap dish, and I would sing along to the radio. And he opened the shower curtain and goes, "Dude, you can sing. You want to sing for my band?" I mean, I'd been in choir as a kid and had vocal training formally before all that. But I said, sure. And that's how I kicked off, was in Minnesota. And I slowly moved my way into the largest Midwest group that was called Dare Force. And we played, typically 6, 7 nights a week, and 5 hour sets with a break. We probably played 350 shows a year. We did a lot of Canadian shows. We do back and forth on Highway 1 for about a month, and we go back down through the Midwest, down into Chicago, Indiana. Then we do that circuit for year after year. I'd give my left one right now to do one more repeat of that, but at the time I can tell you it wasn't too fun, but it was a good initiation to the life of rock and roll. I can tell you that built me.
And I also want to say that you're one of my very first guest when it comes to the music industry and hard rock and heavy metal. Because normally, this on my show that I do, I usually talk about, of all things, we talk about rock and metal, but we also talk about professional wrestling.
Yeah, I know. I heard that. Yeah.
Mhm. Um, a bit of a ridiculously stupid question, but I have to ask: were you a wrestling fan growing up?
No.
No.
No, I actually Hulk Hogan came out to one of our shows one night, and I didn't realize how massive that guy was. The stage is about 12 inches tall. We were playing a place in St. Paul, Minnesota, called the Libations Station, and he walked in, and of course he was a superstar. I think the Rocky movie had come out then, and
Yes.
he was walking around in front of the stage with a girl on each shoulder, and he was looking in my eyes. I mean, that's how tall he was. He was a giant man, and I was like, God, he's a beast. But that was really all my formal education of being around, pro wrestlers and that lifestyle. But I have a lot of friends that actually, because I lived in the South for a while, and wrestling is huge in the South. Big fans, but not me personally, no.
Yeah, because it just so happens because when we were talking about Oklahoma and Minnesota, because you had two at the time back in the 70s and 80s, you had back in the day when you had territories, you had different territories that you would work for. It's not like that
Mhm.
anymore, and it hasn't been for a long time. But back in the day, back in Oklahoma, you used to have Mid South Wrestling, and in Minnesota, you had the AWA, which was run by the legend Vern Gagne. And that's where Hulk Hogan really got his big break.
Vern Gagne, yeah. Yeah, yeah. I remember the name. Yeah. And then you had Jesse Ventura. He came out of Minnesota, I think, right? Didn't he wrestle too?
Yes, yeah, but he had to cut his career short due to blood clots, which is when he pivoted to becoming a color commentator or a bad guy announcer.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, and then he went on to be governor and crazy career.
Yeah. So getting back to your career, though, uh, and this is getting to the point where we're going to tread lightly when it comes to some of these questions. Moving on to your time, your stint in Accept. How did you hear about the audition for a replacement for Udo Dirkschneider at the time?
Crazy story. If you've got a couple minutes, I had gone to LA, and everybody's a singer or an actor or a guitar player in Los Angeles, right? When I went there, I had nothing. I was homeless. I was living out of people's cars. I was, starving to death. And I had met a woman named Lucy Forbes, and she had this thing that was called Rock Congress. It was kind of a rock placement agency. And out of a good heart of her, she lived down in Santa Monica, and she allowed me to stay at her house, and I would sleep on her hardwood floor in her living room next to this fake fireplace that ran off propane gas. And I'd basically pile up my clothes for a pillow and cover myself in my jacket. And that's where I stayed. But during that time, I had met some musicians, one of them being Mitch Perry, who played with Sheehan and Tallis and played with Michael Schenker and stuff. We had recorded a 5-song demo, and I pretty much had hit my bottom being in LA. I said, nothing's going to happen. I got to get out of here. So called my folks, and they had moved to Colorado, and I got on a Greyhound and went to live with them and picked up my day job, which was construction. Basically, that's how I survived. And I get a phone call one night from Wolf Hoffman out of the blue, and I really thought it was a prank call. And he was saying, "Hi, I'm Wolf Hoffman. Got your songs from Lucy. We think you're really good. Would you be interested in audition?" And I thought, yeah, whatever. But the story goes that Dieter Dirks, who had gone to Los Angeles literally a few days after I had split, and told Lucy that they had a guy named Robert Armitage kind of in the band before me after Udo, and he wasn't working out. And he told her the story. I need a guy. Do you know anybody? And she goes, yeah, this guy. And he listened to the cassette and goes, that's the voice. Call him. She goes, I don't know where he is. He left. He went to Colorado. So apparently they had gone through the phone book and found all the Reeses in the Colorado Springs area and nailed it down by calling those names and found my dad's number. And he said, well, he doesn't live here with us. He lives up on the mountain. Here's his phone number. And that's how it happened. A call in the middle of the night, probably 10, 11 o'clock during a blizzard. I was home from work. We couldn't go anywhere. And not long afterwards, I was on a plane to Dusseldorf, Germany. I remember my father saying, we got to go because they're going to close down the highway to Denver. So we're going to go a night early, and you're going to have to, I'm going to get you a hotel room, and then you just walk across the highway to Denver Stapleton, get on your plane and go to Germany. I'm like, okay. And I'd been to Canada. That's as far as my your worldly travels. I had no clue what was in store. So got a hotel, got up, went got on the plane and flew to Germany. That's when I met Accept. Crazy, huh?
Crazy. Um, what was the creative process like during the making of Eat the Heat? Were the music and lyrics written prior, or did you have any creative input at the time?
There were some titles. The amazing thing was, though, I don't know if you've traveled abroad much, but you get this thing called jet lag, and I'd never had it. So I fly to Germany and I get there at night, and it's daytime where I'm from, and I can't sleep because I'm excited. And they put me in this old guest house and see you tomorrow kind of thing, and just left me there. And I was in this old decrepit house, musty smelling, and I decided to go for like a walk at 3 o'clock in the morning because I just couldn't sleep. And I got lost. I don't know what Reisstrasse means or any of those things at the time. And I was putting the key in these old houses' doors until I found the house that I was staying in. I went back, got in that house and fell asleep. And right at about 8, 9 o'clock in the morning, I hear a knock on my door. I open the door. It's Peter Baltus with a bass on his back saying, let's go to the studio. And I'm like, cool. I get to meet the Scorpions. I mean, that's how my mind was at the time because I knew they were there doing Savage Amusement. And I thought, wow, I get to meet Dieter Dirks and the Scorpions guys. I wasn't really even comprehending the gravity of what was going on. And we walk in, and I see Rudolph and I see Dieter, and they're having some kind of a meeting. And I say hello, and they just gave me a weird look. And Peter rushed me downstairs to a demo studio and said, here's a song called Turn the Wheel. It's a working title right now. Sing something. And I'm like, what? So we proceeded to just me scribbling lyrics and singing a few lines, then rewind the tape. And we did that for days. And what would happen is the band would come in at night and listen to what I did separately to get a feel if I was the right voice for that. You know what I mean? There was no waste of time. It was right to work. That's a very German way of doing things. Taught me a lot. I mean, you go from a club singer to learning, 40 cover songs and trying to write your own material and throwing in a few of your own songs but having to play, Aerosmith and Zeppelin and Dio and all that stuff just to get paid every week, to being thrown right into the soup of like, this is what a real working rock and roll band is. This is the big league. And you learn quick or you go home quick.
And I know you've told the story before that when you were in the middle of a take, Dieter paused and said to you at that time, if this album can either be a really big success or a complete and utter failure. Not that he used those words, I'm just paraphrasing, but
The
he
exact
did
words
say,
were, you realize if this fails, they're going to blame you and they're going to blame me. And in my 27-year-old mind, I thought I was king shit. And it's not going to fail. It's going to be great. And he goes, we will see. And then he hit the record button and we proceeded. And we would work from 1 o'clock in the afternoon till 1 a.m., 7 days a week. I mean, I could get up after that vocal exercise and working with those guys. I could have gone up at 9 o'clock and done a matinee show at a festival and gone and done an hour and a half show at night. That's how strong my voice had become. But that was his words. And there could be no truer words that he spoke, although offensive at the time. Looking back, he knew what he was talking about.
and talk to me about I don't know if you ever got asked the question about the Generation Clash music video. Um, was there a script or was there a storyboard presented to you about the story that they wanted to tell in the music video? Because you see there's a kid who, who's, I guess you could say the kid feels a sense of alienation from his sister and from his parents. And then he just transforms from the start of the video to the end.
never was really given any access to what Wolfhoff and his wife, the manager, would plan. We shot that at the Brooklyn Navy Yard, which was abandoned in New York. I get told we're performing, and then we're going to have this kid come in, and they're going to shave his head, and there was a bunch of rats that were supposed to be in the video, but they brought in this box full of these like rats and they opened it up, and being an old steel Navy Yard, what do you think the rats did? As soon as they hit the floor, they just vanished. So it's somewhere in that video. I think there's a glass case in the kid's room of the video. The funny thing about the head shaving is on some of the gigs we played, people would say, shave my head on stage. And there's a video out there someplace that my brother, who was still active in the Marines at the time, got up on stage and shaved a fan's head in front of the audience. So it was kind of a gimmick, but I really didn't have anything to do. Besides, I wrote some of the lyrics of the song, but I think that title was Gabby had written that title. Because if you look at the Accept albums, it says all songs by Accept and Deffy. Deffy was Gabby Hoffman.
Mhm.
So when I came in, I sort of added the American style kind of writing along their music, you know. But I had nothing to do with that storyboard. And honestly, it was not my concept. I think the song was
And
an utter disaster to release first. I mean, we had great rocking tracks like Ecstasy and D Train and Hellhammer being as a transition as the new singer from the second biggest metal band in Germany. You come out with something that odd that was just push people like, what the hell is this? You know what I mean? I think that could have been something released later in hindsight for the fans once they gotten used to the new guy and the transition. I thought that was an utter mistake. Although I did hear one good story. My parents had went to see the Eagles, and they before the Eagles went on, they were cranking the PA, and all of a sudden they put Generation Clash through the sound system outside with that low bass. And then my mother looked at my father and go, "That's Dave's song." And you could really feel the bass, and they were tuning the PA before the band came on. So they were some sound people were using that as that little tune-up tweak to get everything warmed up.
talk to us about the tour that you did with Metal Church and Wasp, and how would you say the tour went? What were
I'm
some
not going to get it. I'm not
good
going to get
memories?
into the
No,
dirt. I'm not going to
no,
get.
no,
But
no.
I'll tell you what happened first was being that I had played the Midwest and all over the United States for those years we talked about earlier. I was well connected with a guy named John Domagal, who has ARM Entertainment now, who books Bret Michaels and Vince Neil and a bunch of acts. He was just a nobody booking agent that was booking Dare Force. And they asked me, since you played so many gigs in the States, do you have a contact there that could book us at a club tour as a headliner to kick off before we find a tour to go on? So I called John, and it was like his first big opportunity to book a national group. So we did like 35 shows as a headliner throughout the United States. And then while that was happening, we get word that we're offered to go out with Wasp and Metal Church. In all honesty, by that time, the record had not gained any traction. We'd started off in San Antonio at the Sunken Gardens Amphitheater, about 20,000 people. And as the tour progressed, the shows got smaller. Promoters were selling from theaters to large clubs, from large clubs to medium sized clubs. So it wasn't a successful venture.
At
And you've got at that time the band was not everybody knows the story a million times, but the band was not communicating. Since then, water under the bridge with some of us is okay, but it just wasn't working. The band was feeling the pressure that this didn't work. All the suit and tie guys in New York that were trying to break the band worldwide, as opposed to hitting 400,000 records and then it's stopping like Balls did or whatever. And like Dieter said, they're going to blame you. And that's what the press did. Um, the funny thing that I always like to remind the audience out there that are, purist Accept fans, I didn't hire myself. It was the band decision. And it was because Udo's voice was not radio friendly. And you need lots of airplay to be successful, especially in North America. And that's hence why they got an American English speaking guy or an English guy to come in, the blonde hair, the different image. It was just the thing about Germans and why Udo is so successful. One day we went to see Udo while I was still recording the album, I think. He was in his solo band, and my guitar player, Andy Susamil, was playing with him at the time. And we went to a theater, I think in Dusseldorf, something like that, Essen or somewhere, about 1,500 people going berserk. And I didn't get it. And I looked at Gabby and I said, "What is it about that guy?" And she said, "He's one of them." And I said, "What does that mean?" She goes, "He comes from an area in Germany that's very steel factory based, and you know what I mean? And he got out, and they're loyal. And the thing about the European audience is don't change the color of the palette if it's working. You know what I mean? Because you can put out a few stinker records even with the original lineup and they'll stand by you. But in a way, it was a sense of betrayal to the fans, whereas Udo was the voice and is still the voice, in my opinion, of Excel. And a very dear friend of mine, as you can see, his success now continues. I mean, he can do Dirk Schneider, he can do UDO, right? Or he can do the Balls to the Wall 40-year anniversary. You know what I mean? So when she said that, it made total sense to me, you know. And I've done a huge tour with Udo, the Steel Factory tour, supporting one of my solo records. I went out and did about 35 dates with him throughout Europe and Scandinavia. I was the special guest. So it was kind of a thing like, oh, two Accept guys are touring together. So it was great halls, lots of people. It was a great tour.
And how is Udo as a person?
Fabulous. I mean, when I met him, I had taken his job essentially, and the record Animal House was going to be another Accept album. So the trade-off was, we'll give you the record, but we're going to do another one. And I wish we had had some of the songs from Animal House because they were great. But every time I'd pass him in the hallway, he was recording Mean Machine at the time, I think, and he was always a gentleman. And nothing but good things to say about him. He never treated me like the guy that took his job. He's always like, "Good luck, man. I wish nothing but the best for you." And since then, his son, I'd played some gigs in the early 2000s. His son, Sven, who's his drummer, obviously now, had a band called Damage. And he would call me or email me and say, "Hey, can Damage open for you tonight in Germany?" Absolutely. So if Udo was home, Udo would come to the gig to support his son. And that band Damage was great. So that was kind of an event as well. Oh, the two Accept guys are hanging out. So everybody wants a picture, blah, blah, blah. You know, nothing but good things to say about him.
And
Of
I know
all the
we're
guys in that band, of all of them, he was probably the most sincere, down to earth, easygoing guy of all. And the guy's literally a tank. The tour I did was talking about that I did with him. He had a bone infection in his leg. And they told him in Spain before I jumped on, "Go home and get well. This is bad." He said, "I never cancel." So he did my tour with a cane and he was the same every night. And I know he wasn't feeling well. He had a fever, taking medication. I mean, that guy tore it up. Hats off.
And I know you said we're not going to talk about dirt, not about gossip. But regarding the bands Wasp and Metal Church, do you still maintain any relationships with the members of the band?
With Wasp,
Wasp and or Metal Church?
no, I'm really good friends with Chris Holmes. Chris and I were the black sheep on that tour. He was on his way out. I was on my way out. So we bonded. And Chris and I, we spoke a couple of weeks ago. He was in Canada actually
Mhm.
with Jimmy K.
Yep.
and called me up and did a Zoom chat with me. And what are you doing? You know, and I would go over to his house all the time after that tour when I was putting Bangalore together when he was married to Lita Ford and hang out at their house. And she would be on tours and he had nobody to hang out with. And Chris can be kind of an intimidating individual. He's a big man, but he's probably the sweetest teddy bear human being that I know. And we just bonded. We're friends. I mean, I think he's amazing.
And well, but you're not. You do not remain in touch with the members of Metal Church. Not.
No, Mike, before Mike died, I saw them in Italy and he died a few months after that. I said hello. Um, but that's about the extent of it. I never was really tight with them. They had a different bass player. I mean, Marshall was in the band on that tour. And you know, a lot of those guys was Metallica's road crew. And they were on the bus when Cliff was killed, you know. And when the band was not getting along, except I would jump on the Metal Church bus and ride with them to the gig. So I got to hear all those stories about that, how traumatic that was and what they went through. But they had a different guy. I think they called him Thor on bass, and he was a maniac. Mike was always very, very healthy, very quiet, didn't party. You know, we were cordial with one another, but I wasn't what I'd call friends, those guys. But I did see them and we all said, "Hey, what's up? You know, how are you?" Because we see you cross paths with people all the time. Blackie, he never spoke to any of us. Frankie Benelli, I was good friends with. Actually, I should say that before. During that time, Frankie and I bonded, and after that, when I was putting Bangalore, I saw Frankie in LA a lot of times. He had another band, I can't remember what it was called, and he would come to my gigs, and he had grown a really long beard, and I didn't recognize him once in the dressing room. He goes, "What, are you not going to talk to me anymore?" I said, "Who are you?" He goes, "It's Frankie." I go, "Oh my God, forgive me, Frankie. I didn't even recognize you, you know." But yeah, Frankie was a good friend. Remember,
How?
we saved a bird one night, Frankie and I.
Oh yeah.
We were playing in Detroit or someplace like that, and a bird had fallen out of the nest on the building. And Frankie picked it up and he said, "Oh my God, what do we do?" And I said, "Well, we can jump on top of the bus and you can put it back in the nest." It was like a swallow, a mud swallow. So I lifted Frankie up and he climbed up on the bus with this little bird and he stood up there and he put it back in the nest. I'll always remember that. We saved a bird.
I never got the opportunity to meet Frankie Benelli. I never got to see Quiet Riot perform live, but from people that I've spoken to the Noom, they said he was a good, a very a good man indeed.
I jammed with Rudy a few times, you know, and he had a band called Driver with Tony McAlpine and Tommy. I went over and jammed with them a few times before I went back to California before Accept. They heard me sing or something and come on down and audition. So I that's how I met Rudy. And then later on, after Accept and Bangalore Choir had run its course, Rudy would invite me to do the Randy Rhoads shows for the school at the Palace. I did a few of those as a singer with, you know, everybody you know that you could think of would always be part of that. But Rudy was always a gentleman to me as well. Good, he's a good egg.
Moving forward, after your tenure with Accepted ended, how did the Bangalore Choir get together? How did that come
Okay,
about?
that's the thing. I had momentum. I said I will not be defeated. You know, except when on that, you know, crush Dave, blame Dave for the band not working out thing that Dieter warned me about. So I went to LA, and this time I had momentum because people had seen me, MTV, some shows. I go to LA and people go, "You're that guy from Accept." And I literally put this band together, went through a few member changes before it was right. And in 9 shows in Hollywood and Southern California, which is a period of about a year, because you play like once a month in California, I was offered a deal from every major label in the industry. And I went to see, I've been invited by Herman Rarebell from the Scorpions to see Michael Schenker with Macaulay one night at the Palace. And I told the band that Herman had called me, let's go see Schenker. And they're like, oh my God. So we get there and we go up the back stairs. And while I'm walking out, one guy from Giant Warner Brothers says, "Hey, man, the buzz in town is you guys are going to sign." I said, "Yeah, get in line, make an offer because I'm going to cut this deal." He said, "Be in my office in the morning." And the next day, we went in and we signed with Warner Brothers. So it went extremely fast.
And I remember you
Then
also.
I
Oh,
pick
sorry.
up.
Go ahead.
I
Sorry. Sorry.
then I pick up during that time. I'm kind of managed by a guy who was Stevie Nicks' personal assistant, and he brought in the heavyweights at Stevie's management, Howard Kaufman, who had the Eagles, they had Art, they had, so I mean, Whitesnake, the whole package just kind of fell in my lap. You know what I mean? I mean, it was like overnight.
And I remember you also said in an interview when you had Jared Leto apparently got one of his first acting gigs being in one of your
Mhm.
videos.
Yeah, there's cattle calls for videos and the song Loaded Gun, which we didn't write. And for the life of me, I can't remember the guy's name. He's the bass player in Styx. I always blank his name. They threw that song at me at management, and my guitar player said, "I'm not playing that song. I'm not playing that." And the guy said, "You're an idiot. That's a hit song." Well, it went on to be 144 radio stations, most added to radio in like 2 weeks. It was a hit overnight. But Jared had walked in on the cattle call and was chosen as the male actor. And the little blonde girl that's in it was another famous actress, and I can't remember her name at the moment, but she also went on to do some big movies. So that's kind of weird because I was in Germany and I was dating somebody who was a friend of or a fan of 30 Seconds to Mars, and we went to the gig. I got to meet the band, and I said, "Do you remember me?" And he's looking at me funny, and I said, "I'm David Reece from Bangalore Choir. You were in my video." And he goes, "Oh my God, that was my first acting gig," because his mom brought him for the audition. He was about 14, I think. Crazy. Yeah.
Well, for me, one of my favorite Jared Leto movies. I don't know if you ever saw the movie Requiem for a Dream.
Oh yeah, amazing. And Dallas Buyers Club. I mean, the guy is a formidable talent, not only acting but musically. He's got the whole package. The Requiem movie was pretty dark. I mean, that was,
Yes.
I've had my experiences with the drug culture, and that's pretty right on how it is. And my daughter actually got that on a VHS and put it in one night, and it was like, oh my God, this is bad, you know. And I think when they take off his arm, don't they amputate his arm in the movie, if I remember correctly?
Yes. Yes, they
Yeah,
do.
it is horrible, horrible.
It is. It's a harsh reality. It's a real harsh
Mhm,
reality of the drug culture,
mhm,
and well, to me, the biggest thing about the whole movie to me, and I don't. This is a bit of a sidebar, but I would say Jared Leto definitely deserved an Oscar for his performance in that movie, right along with Ellen Burstyn, who played his mother in the movie. She was
yeah,
nominated, but she didn't win.
yeah. I mean, I think that was his first movie, I believe, or one of them. And
Mm, I,
Dallas Buyers Club, I don't know, did he get one for that?
yeah, I believe he got nominated and won. Or
Yeah, I know McConaughey did,
mhm.
but that was talk about harsh reality again, the AIDS epidemic, and trying to survive, to find the drug to keep you alive another day, and just that whole storyline was also dark, but real.
And what are your thoughts about the album On Target, which the Bangalore Choir released?
Dude, that record is. I play probably 5 songs in my set, and to go. on stage in a country like France or Bulgaria, and hear somebody singing "Slipping Away" or uh, "Are you going to play Freight Train? Are you going to play Angel in Black?" And go, you know these songs, and it's like because you have to understand when that album came out, it was on the cusp of the grunge movement, and I think the first 2 weeks we did relatively well, about 300,000 units. And then this band called Nirvana came out and shipped platinum and just basically ripped the door off the hinges for all hard rock bands, melodic rock bands. Our lives were basically superstardom to basically being dropped from the label, dropped from management, get a real job, it's over. Yeah. But the longevity of that record amazes me. I mean, I love it. And something hit right with that record. Had it come out 2 years earlier, it would have been a double platinum, triple platinum record, I'm sure. I mean, I wrote with, Aldo Nova and Bon Jovi. I had Steve Plunkett and I had developed a relationship from Autograph on a few of the tracks, and it all just came together, but the timing was wrong, you know. But the weird thing about it was is that I knew in my heart that the grunge movement might last 5 years. It was kind of a new thing, but I didn't really think it would stick. And over here in Europe, it didn't really cross the pond for about another year and a half or so after it exploded in America. Had I known that, I would have brought the band over to Europe because the band had done so well, which was unbeknownst to us, the UK and Europe, that the record was selling great. Had I known that, I would have gypsied it and got the band over here and kept playing. But we were told it was over. But that record had made an impact in my life because I showed the world I don't have to be an accept. My talent proved that. I put that together. That was my baby, and I'm still performing it today since 1990. You know,
Hmm.
36 years or whatever it is. I don't know what it is.
Talk to me about Circle of Silence, which was another band that you formed.
Well, that was kind of strange because I Bangalore had done some shows at Badlands, and I got to know Greg Chason, who I admire greatly, also, and I was always a Ray Gillen fan. When Ray died, Greg had, being that we had done shows together, said, "Let's get Reece in Badlands." So I went down and jammed with those guys a few times, and you could just feel in the air that it was over. But Greg and I maintained a relationship, and he came up with the name Circle of Silence, SOS, instead of with a C. And we went in, started writing songs, and Steve Plunkett was going to produce it. But Greg is a blues rock purist. And once he started hearing the production and what was going on, he just said, "I'm out. I'm not doing this," which I respect. And he walked out of that. But I continued on with that. That was the losing attempt to stay relevant with the change in the cycle of music. Like, I mean, Warrant did it, we did it. I've been in a kitchen barbecue one night with Piercy and Jamie Lane, and everybody was standing there. We're all looking at each other like, what are we going to do now? Everybody got dropped. It was freaking over. But we all tried to make a record that would kind of fit the sound of what was happening. And the new fans knew that's what it was. And our old fans were like, what are you guys doing? So I had a couple of Asian deals for that, and it just frittered away, and I disappeared. I just said, "I'm done with music. I'm leaving," and I left. You know,
And
9 years.
after you had left music, what you went back to? What were you doing after you had decided to leave music for that at that time?
I went back to commercial painting, and then I always loved cowboys work and ranching, and I love to hunt, and I love training bird dogs. That's my passion. I've got some here, and I'm a bird hunter. I love the art of working with a dog that works with the man, and when it all comes together, it's a beautiful piece of art to me. To see a dog come on, get it right in his head, You get it right when you shoot. Everything works. It's a nice walk. You're outside. Well, what I was doing was I was traveling to Montana because I'd heard from a friend about how great it was, the hunting. And you hear that a lot. And so I said, I'm going to take a risk. And he drew me a map, where to go, what ranch to go to. So I went there and I was started going every weekend. I'd drive all night, Friday night, be in the field at 5 a.m. on Saturday and hunt Saturday and Sunday, and then drive back to where I was living. It was nuts. Well, one of the days I was on that ranch, knowing what I know about construction and painting and everything, I told the ranch owner, "Your house is in dire need of a fresh painted coat of paint and some work." And he said, "All you guys that hunt on my place say that you're going to help me out. And then you get done with your hunting and you go back home." I said, "No, go buy this, go buy this, go buy that, go buy this." And he went and bought all that stuff, and I fixed his house up in about 3 days. And he said, "I could sure use a guy like you on the ranch. Um, would you be interested in working for me?" I said, "Yeah," because at the time I was lost. I was a full blown alcoholic, miserable, divorced, and it was just a way to get away and do what I love to do. And I worked on a ranch for a bunch of years and got to know the cattle industry. And Montana is it's hard to explain what it's like. It's the great wide open, man. It's a wonderful place. Great people, great hunting. But deep down in my little heart, you always had that voice. God, I'd hear a song on the radio or something, and my voice started to deteriorate because I wasn't using it. And I'd sing along, and I always had this missing thing about me. I'd love to go back out and do it again, but I didn't know what to do. And then I sold some puppies to a guy, or actually I traded him. He was an IT guy from Canada, actually Alberta. And he came into my house one day when he's looking at dogs. He said, "Where's your computer? I got to do some work." I said, "I don't have one." And he said, "What?" I said, "I don't know anything about computers." He goes, "Let me set you up, dude. I'll trade you some puppies for a system." So he set me up and got me a MySpace page. And I turned it on and it was all dial up. And that day, when I got everything going, I had 3 band offers, and basically everybody's saying, "Where have you been? We thought you were dead." And 3 bands offered me gigs that day. And I was back in it, man.
And I wanted to talk to you a bit about because you seem to have an affinity for European hard rock and metal bands. What about the Swedish outfit Gypsy Rose?
That was the band that, excuse me, uh, going through all these bands that were offering me gigs. I had no idea what was going on in the music business. I didn't know about illegal downloading. I didn't know what was happening. Martin Conlon reached out to me through Escape Music and said, "Would you be interested in doing the record?" I'm like, "Yeah," but then try to imagine telling your boss, "Hey, I got to go over to Sweden and do a record." And they look at me like I'm on drugs. And the wife actually Wikipedia or whatever you call it, and found out my history because I didn't tell anybody anything that I did. Because one reason you do that when you're in that lifestyle, ranching is about the family, about the keeping the business alive, being able to pay the bank every year. And I always thought that they would kind of act differently around me if they knew what I did or who I knew, what I'd been through. So I never mentioned it. And once they found out, they all of them changed. Like they thought I had this weird like nose in the air attitude, which I knew they would do because it's so foreign to them. Yeah, you did what? You went where? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Why didn't you tell us? And I said, "Well, because it doesn't matter. But by the way, I got to go to Sweden and do a record." And you leave a guy with 400 cows that are about to have calves, and go over to make a rock and roll album. They don't really can't warm up to that too well. So I go over to Sweden, do the record, and my voice was kind of out of shape at the time. Well, it was out of shape, and then at the end of that recording process, it started coming back. So I fly back to Montana, overwhelmed by work. Everybody's like, "Oh, thank God you're home." Martin calls me and says, "Hey, man, when I listen to the tracks, you're really getting in the swing of it at the end of the album. You need to come back and sing this record. So I had to go back. Then I lost my job. Yep, we can't use you, man. You got to be here on the grounds, or we're going to have to find another ranch foreman. So the sacrifices you make for rock and roll, right?
Hmm. And what led you to decide to reunite Bangalore Choir?
It's my baby. I mean, I've made an attempt at a few records with that. We were asked in 2010 to go to Firefest, but the rules and regulations of Firefest was you have to have three original members to play their festival. And so I rounded up Kurt and I got Danny, rest in peace, Danny. He just passed last year, to go and do this Firefest gig. And we did a live album there that night. We hadn't played together in 19 years. And when they drop the curtain and you see the place is sold out and there's flags from every country in the world and they're singing along from the first song, you're like, oh my God. And everybody's going, we've waited 20 years to see this. Where were you? So I tried to kind of make a few BC records in the interim. And what I would end up doing is I'd get like three pretty good tracks on a record and I'd honestly like seven fillers. It just never had that oomph that On Target had. You know, Kurt doesn't want to play anymore. He teaches, he doesn't want to tour. Danny would do it, but he's passed. But, everybody changes over the years. And it's like, you know, it was always hard to kind of nail that down. But I did it with this new record, Rapid Fire Succession. I sat down with Andy and studied On Target. And our first four or five attempts, it didn't happen, songwriting. And then it finally clicked with, I think, Driver's Seat or Bullet Train were the two that I said, okay, now we're on it. Here we go. We got it. And we wrote so many songs. I mean, with Andy, the one thing that's great about Andy Susamil is that once we start rocking, it's like a rainstorm of ideas. He's my go-to guy, a great guitar player. Just spoke to him the other day. He's down in South America right now. Um, we're actually writing another one right now, but we had like six or seven left over from this record. And what happened was there were so many good songs, and this isn't bragging, that the record company said, why don't we do like a Steinman Bad Out of Hell thing where it's like act one and act two? I'm like, you really think so? And he's like, yeah. So we put, act one, act two. There were 16 tracks and there's like another five or six laying around that were just as good. And my biggest fear was this is an hour and 6 minute long record. People might take this like, oh, a little too long, but it took off. It exploded. I mean, I was number one at radio for 6 weeks with Bullet Train in America. I haven't had that kind of happening for 20 something years. It was KNEC came back, Metal Shop. Everybody embraced the record. It just blew up, you know.
And
There's
I will
something
say,
to that formula.
one of my favorite songs on the new Bangalore Choir album is "Rock of Ages." I can't
Yeah,
stop listening to that song. I love it.
thank you. People say that a lot, and for me, it was kind of like I don't know, but what do I know? It's all speculative, right? I mean, what I may love, some people don't like, but I've heard people say what you said. One of my favorites, I can't stop listening to it. Another one that's really stuck with people is Mending Fences, which I wrote with Ferdy Dornberg from Axel Rudy Pell. And my wife was enamored with it and tons of people. And I was just like, yeah, I don't know. It's the end of the record, but Rock of Ages is a religious song. It's not, some people say, well, right when you see the title, you think of Def Leppard, of course. But how many heartbreakers are there? How many you really got me's are there? I mean, a title's a title. It doesn't mean it's going to be a direct ripoff or progression of that title. But for me, it's kind of my Christian belief of, my spiritual beliefs. It's what's involved in the lyric content. May mean something to somebody else. I don't know.
All right, since we got about 5 minutes left, since Michael only would give us an hour, the way I always like to wrap up my interviews is I would ask one thing that I love asking my guests is, what are you grateful for?
The no quit in me, the time that I did take off, being sober now for, I guess, 8, 9 years, I don't drink. Being blessed that I can still sing, carry a tune, and that people give a damn about what I'm doing. And my advice would be to anybody out there that's starting off this journey. If you're kind of on the fence about playing music, stay on the fence, play it for fun. But if you jump in headfirst and you're going to make this your life, there's a real good chance that you're not going to make it. Be prepared for the worst. You can make all the greatest records on the planet, but that doesn't mean that the hit factor is going to strike you or whatever listeners you have tonight that see it the way I see it. You have to be willing to accept that defeat because this is, if it was that easy, everybody would be famous. So if you throw yourself into the river, you better be able to swim. But if you're on the fence and you're enjoying playing weekends, good for you. Stay there. Because if you got it, if you're going to do this, you got to do this. It's not a part-time gig. You know what I mean? And it does not get any easier. I don't care if you're selling 10 million records or you're selling 1,000 records. It's these days. I'm at the point now where I can say no if I don't want to do something without going, man, I should do that. It seems that the challenges are becoming unbearable, but I love music. I love to sing. I love rock and roll, and I'll leave it at that.
And
If
in
it made sense.
closing, in closing, is there something that you'd like? Is there any message that you would like to say to your fans that you never got a chance to say?
I get asked that all the time. It's. I don't want to be redundant. How much can you say thank you for embracing the new Bangalore Choir record as much as they have? I mean, I was out on the Girls School Alcatraz tour last fall. You know, 30% of that audience came to see me play and play those songs. How great is that? Thank you. I've got festivals coming up soon. I'm going to South America this year. I mean, thank you. And there's a reason for that because people want to hear it, they want to see it.
Do you ever plan on returning to back here to back to Montreal? Because I would love to finally see you live in concert because I never got a
I was
chance to.
planning on it, but back to what I said, be prepared for bad news. I wasn't invited for a certain tour that I should be on, and I wanted to be on badly, and I'm not part of it. I'm going to America end of June to play, but not Canada, unfortunately, because I love rock in Canada. God, I played there probably 50 shows in my life, and I always had a blast. On the Wasp tour, I did that Sword gig in Montreal, I think. That was great, but no, sadly, no. I should be. In all honesty, I should be on a tour that's going through there as one of the opening bands, but I'm not. I never quit. I mean, you never know. I could get an offer and I'd be on a plane because I've got an American group because it's just ridiculous with visas now and tariffs and everything to travel with a group from here. So my European group is different from my American and South American group. You know what I mean? So I mean, I'm ready to go. Pull the trigger. Let's go.
All right. So since we're about to wrap things up, David, thank you from the bottom of my heart for taking some time out of your day to talk to some schmuck like me from Montreal, Canada. But I want to thank you very, very much for accepting this
Well, thank
invitation
you.
and accepting this interview.
Hey man, it's an honor, dude. I mean, I'll talk to anybody, I mean, there's a band that I'm not going to mention the name of, huge band. They were kind of like, never heard of that podcast. I'm not going to do it. But when they go over to America, they sell 50 tickets. Their management said, I don't care what podcast it is, who it is, you're doing it. And guess what now? They're selling out all the venues in the United States. They had this up of their nose that they had to be on the biggest ones and all this. No, man, it all matters. You matter. You're not some schmuck from Montreal. I'm just a schmuck from Montana. You know what I mean? But I appreciate you taking your time to ask me these questions and have an interest in what I did. It must have meant something because you know more about me than I remember.
Well, I've had some help. I do have someone who does assist me with the research in order to ask thought-provoking questions, because I like to ask questions that are not cliche or repetitive.
How does it feel to be in a band? That one, I hate that question. What's it like being in a band? You know, those kind of questions. You know, next, it's like, how do you answer that? It's like, come on, man. Internal journalistic integrity. I mean, show some intelligence like you did with me. Ask me about the journey, not the destination. Being in a band is the easy part. Really, it's all the other bullshit that goes along to get into that. I'd like to talk about. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. So, David, once again, thank you so much for taking the time to speak to me. And may I
Thank you,
remind each
Dave.
and every one of you, if you like content like this, there's no time like the present to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you get notified every single time a new interview or some new content is uploaded onto the
Absolutely.
page.
Support this program. Want to support music. This guy knows what he's doing. Do it. Quit whining about it. If you want to learn, you want to watch, you want to hear, subscribe.
And I want to thank each and every one of you for tuning in. If you're unable to when we're live, the video's never going anywhere. Be sure to check it out on YouTube. And
Yep.
and I will be seeing each and every one of you for another special 2-on-1 interview with none other than WWE wrestler, or Hall of Famer, I should say, Jake the Snake Roberts and
Whoa.
Cheryl Roberts.
Nice. Tune in, folks.
All right. Take care of yourselves and each other and love one another. Thank you all for
Absolutely.
watching. Take care.
Thank you.